Stacy Feldman was 44 years old, and to everyone who knew her, family was everything. She was the youngest of three sisters.
My baby sister. She's 4 years younger than I am.
The baby of the family, the one who always believed life would eventually give her what she dreamed of most: a husband, children, a home filled with warmth.
A huge heart you could just see before you even knew her.
The joy of Stacy and what really made Stacy who she is also is she had all these different friends.
By March of 2015, it looked like she had it all. A beautiful house in Denver, Colorado, 2 young children, a husband named Robert Feldman. From the outside, the picture was perfect. The kind of life people admire from a distance and assume is happy. Stacy was deeply involved in her community. She volunteered, she led, she gave her time to others. At her children's elementary school, she served as president of the parent-teacher organization. She also worked for a nonprofit dedicated to funding research into liver disease. People who knew her described the same thing again and again. She radiated joy. She loved pink. She loved celebrations. She was the kind of person who made a room feel lighter just by walking into it. But long before the house in Denver, before the children, before the marriage, there were years of waiting. As Stacy entered her 30s, she watched her friends build the lives she wanted for herself. They got married, they had children, and she remained single. For someone who had always dreamed of becoming a wife and a mother, time began to feel like an enemy. Then she met Robert Feldman. Friends knew him as Bob. He was charismatic, confident, 14 years older than Stacy. To her, he seemed like stability, like certainty, like the future finally arriving. They married in 2005 in Montreal at the Ritz. It was everything Stacy had imagined. She wore a tiara because in her mind, this was her fairy tale. Soon after, they settled in the suburbs of Denver. A daughter was born, then a son. From the outside, the Feldmans looked like a family that had won. But illusions don't shatter all at once. They crack quietly. Bob struggled professionally. He was a salesman who never quite delivered, never quite earned enough. Stacy had once dreamed of staying home with her children. Instead, she worked to help keep the household afloat, and slowly, the balance of power shifted. The house was in Bob's name. The credit cards were in Bob's name. The money was in Bob's control. Stacy became financially vulnerable inside her own marriage. Those close to her began to notice changes, control, threats. Bob warned her that if she ever tried to leave, he could take the children and leave her with nothing. It wasn't loud violence. It was quieter than that, and far more dangerous. By 2015, the marriage no longer felt like a fairy tale. It felt like a performance. Behind closed doors, the distance between Stacy and Bob had grown impossible to ignore. They argued, often, about money, about control, about the future. Stacy felt trapped inside a life she had waited decades to build. And then, something changed. In early March, Stacy received an anonymous email. It was short, direct, and devastating. It claimed that Bob was having an affair. At first, she didn't want to believe it, but doubt, once planted, doesn't need much to grow. She began to look closer, at his phone, at his schedule, at the unexplained absences. The picture that emerged was impossible to deny. Bob had been using dating apps, meeting other women, living a second life. For Stacy, it wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. Years of loyalty, years of sacrifice, years of holding the family together. And suddenly, the truth was staring back at her from a screen. She confided in her sisters, she told close friends, and for the first time in her life, Stacy began to speak openly about leaving. She talked about divorce, about starting over, about protecting her children. But leaving was never going to be simple. Bob controlled the money, the house, the accounts, and he made sure she understood that. According to those closest to her, Bob told Stacy that if she tried to leave, she would lose everything: the house, the lifestyle, and possibly the children. Fear replaced hope. Still, Stacy didn't stay silent. On the morning of March 9th, 2015, she confronted Bob. What exactly was said between them is known only to two people. But by the end of that conversation, Stacy was done pretending. She sent messages to friends. She told her sister she was ready to move on. She told people close to her that she was finished. For the first time in years, she sounded resolved, determined, and that made her dangerous. March 1st, 2015 started like any other Sunday morning in the Feldman household. Bob dropped the children off at Temple Sinai for religious school around 8:30 a.m. The plan was for Stacy to pick them up at noon and take them to a Purim carnival. But noon came and went. Stacy was nowhere to be seen. The school called her phone. No answer. Then they called Bob. He said he would be there shortly. When 12:45 p.m. arrived, he still hadn't shown. His story changed. Now he claimed a family friend would pick up the children. Finally, at 1:05 p.m., Bob arrived at the synagogue. His demeanor was off, disheveled, abrupt. Instead of going home, Bob took the children to the Purim carnival and then to a bicycle shop. It wasn't until 3 p.m. that they returned. Then came the call to 911. Bob claimed he had found Stacy unconscious in the shower, water running. He pulled her out, attempted CPR, but the first responders noticed something strange immediately. There was no water on the bathroom floor, not a drop, and on the recording of the 911 call, there were no sounds consistent with chest compressions or rescue breathing, only a toilet flushing, objects being knocked over, a sense of staged chaos. Paramedics arrived at 3:40 p.m. Stacy was pronounced dead at the scene. Detective Randy Dennison, one of the first on site, noted something about Bob's behavior. It wasn't shock, it wasn't panic, it was performance. Bob walked, talked, reacted, all like an actor on a stage. And though the initial ruling suggested a bathroom accident, those closest to Stacy knew something was wrong. In February 2015, Bob Feldman was active on Tinder. He used the name Robert Wolf. He matched with a woman named Susan McBride, a stranger unaware she was about to step into a nightmare. Bob began lying immediately. He told Susan he was divorced. He told her his wife was absent, uninterested in the children. He painted a picture of a man wronged, lonely, and waiting for someone to rescue him. Susan's first date with Bob seemed normal, easy, friendly. But when she tried to look him up online, using the names he gave her, nothing matched, nothing at all. Suspicion grew. Susan tried to break it off, but Bob convinced her to give him another chance. He claimed he had been stalked. He claimed he was separated from his wife. Against her instincts, Susan trusted him. On February 26, 2015, just 4 days before Stacy's death, Bob went to Susan's house. They spent hours talking. They had sex. And yet, immediately after, red flags appeared. He canceled their plans for the following weekend. He pulled away. Susan's gut told her something was very wrong. She started digging deeper. She found Stacy online, the PTO president at Southmore Elementary School, Bob's wife, mother of his 2 children. Suddenly, the pieces clicked into place. Bob was lying. He was married. He had children. He was cheating. Susan faced a choice: walk away or tell Stacy the truth. She chose honesty. On the morning of March 1st, 2015, at 6:20 a.m., Susan sent an email to Stacy. She wrote clearly, compassionately, "I met your husband on Tinder. He told me you were separated. If you're not, you should know he is cheating on you." Susan attached screenshots of their messages, evidence, proof. This was the chain that would set everything in motion, the first domino falling in a deadly sequence. The morning of March 1st, 2015 was ordinary until it wasn't. At 6:20 a.m., Stacy received Susan's email. The words hit her like a hammer. Bob had been lying. He was married. He was cheating. Stacy felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Years of trust, years of dreams, shattered in an instant. She called Susan. Her voice was calm, controlled. 5 minutes of conversation. No hysteria, no screams, just clarity. "I'm done with him," she said. That sentence, 4 simple words, would become the key to understanding what happened later that day. She went about her morning, prepared for the children. The plan: pick them up from Temple Sinai and take them to the Purim Carnival. But the day would never unfold as planned. When Bob picked up the children, the house waited silently. No laughter, no greetings, just shadows. Hours later, the call came. Bob claimed he had found Stacy in the shower, unconscious, water running. He tried CPR, but first responders noticed the inconsistencies immediately. No water on the floor, no sounds of rescue on the call, only objects knocked over, staged chaos. By 3:40 p.m., Stacy was pronounced dead. The perfect life was gone. Detective Randy Dennison was among the first to arrive at the Feldman home. Even from the driveway, something about Bob seemed off. Not grief, not panic, performance. Paramedics checked Stacy, pronounced her dead at 3:40 p.m. But the story Bob told didn't add up. He claimed he had pulled her from a running shower, but the floor was dry, not a drop of water anywhere. And the 911 call, no sounds of chest compressions, no rescue breathing, just objects knocked over, a staged sense of chaos. Detective Dennison noted Bob's behavior. Confused? Maybe. Shocked? Perhaps. But something theatrical lingered. Neighbors mentioned hearing nothing unusual, no struggle, no cries. Yet Stacy had died. The autopsy would soon reveal the truth, or at least hint at it. Dr. Kelly Kobolansky performed it the next day, March 2nd. 80 separate injuries, bruises, abrasions, hemorrhages. Special signs in her eyes, small burst blood vessels, classic indicators of strangulation or suffocation. The cause of death? Officially, undetermined. The perfect crime? Almost. But those who loved Stacy, they felt the truth in their bones. From the moment Susan Ullman learned of her sister's death, she didn't accept the official story. Her instinct told her something was wrong. Bob had lied. He had a history of manipulation. And Stacy deserved justice. Susan recalled, "My immediate reaction was that her husband had killed her." She started gathering evidence, talking to friends, family, neighbors, piecing together Bob's lies, his financial control, his infidelity. She discovered that Bob had profiles on dating apps under fake names: Robert Wolf, Mike Reed. He was a chronic manipulator, always scheming, always deceiving. But Susan knew that suspicions alone wouldn't bring him to justice. She needed expertise. She needed allies. Nearly 2 years after Stacy's death, a psychologist relative suggested contacting an institute specializing in strangulation prevention. They connected Susan with Detective Randy Dennison, who had long harbored doubts about the case. And then Dr. Bill Smoke entered, a forensic expert in domestic violence strangulation cases. Dr. Smoke meticulously reviewed the autopsy, photographs, and evidence from the scene. He saw what others had missed: over 80 injuries, defensive wounds, signs of prolonged violent assault. The picture became horrifyingly clear. Stacy had not slipped. She had not drowned accidentally. She had been attacked, strangled, suffocated, and staged to look like a bathroom accident. The sisterhood had begun its work. Susan's persistence, courage, and determination became the spark that would ignite justice. April 2022, nearly 7 years after Stacy Feldman's death. Robert Feldman finally faced a jury. The courtroom was tense, shadows of the past looming large. 9 days of trial, public attention fixed on every word. Dr. Bill Smoke was the star witness. Using a mannequin, he demonstrated how Bob had attacked Stacy, straddled her, knees pinning her arms, strangling, suffocating. Prosecutor Maggie Convoy told the jury, "Stacy Feldman can't tell you what happened that day, but her body can." Susan McBride flew in from Italy. She testified about the phone call that morning, the chain of events that led to Stacy's death. The Feldman's daughter, now 16, described that morning as completely normal. "I remember walking downstairs, having breakfast with my family. Nothing seemed unusual." The defense tried to discredit Dr. Smoke, called him a hired gun, called him a narcissist, claimed 3 pathologists maintained the death was undetermined. Bob sat quietly, showing little emotion, occasionally laughing with his lawyers as the horrific testimony unfolded. After 9 days, the jury deliberated. Less than 3 hours later, the verdict was in. Guilty of first-degree murder. Stacy Feldman's mother, Dorothy, addressed the courtroom. "If you really loved your children, you wouldn't have killed their mother. This is all because you couldn't keep your pants zipped." Susan Ullman said, "I have been fighting for this for 7 years because my sister deserves to rest in peace. He has taken 7 years from my life, and he's not taking one more second." Bob simply replied, "No. No apology. No explanation." Justice had been served. With the verdict delivered, the weight of 7 years of uncertainty finally lifted. Susan Ullman had fought tirelessly for her sister. Her courage, persistence, and refusal to accept the official story had brought a killer to justice. Stacy Feldman would finally rest in peace. Robert Feldman began a series of appeals, but the evidence was overwhelming. The pattern of abuse, the staged crime scene, the autopsy findings, nothing could erase the truth. The family mourned, but they also celebrated justice. Stacy's mother, Dorothy, found some comfort knowing that her daughter's life and death mattered. Susan became an advocate for domestic violence awareness. She worked with the Alliance for Hope International to educate and protect others from similar fates. The story of Stacy Feldman became more than a tragedy. It became a symbol of resilience, courage, and the power of love and sisterhood. In the end, evil had been confronted. A sister's determination had prevailed, and Stacy's memory would inspire change, ensuring that others might not suffer as she did. Her life, though cut tragically short, left a lasting mark. A story of heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately, justice. Thank you to everyone who watched the video all the way to the end. Our team put a lot of effort into creating it. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. It's a huge motivation for us to work even harder and release new videos faster.